Guys, today we need to talk about Neverness to Everness, a new gacha game that honestly has me speechless. If you didn't know, I'm someone that tends to keep an eye out for new gacha games that come out, and as with my addiction to games like Wuthering Waves, Genshin Impact, and Zenless Zone Zero, Neverness to Everness caught my eye once again. Now there are a few things that I want to go over as to why I think this game is definitely worth looking into, and I'm sure you've already heard about or maybe seen some initial footage when it comes to this game, but don't worry, today's video will also have updates and new looks into the gameplay as of the Tokyo Game Show. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing that will obviously catch your eye when it comes to Neverness to Everness is of course the stunning visuals. Whether it's through the character skills, the ultimates, or even just the environment that you're in, this game is absolutely fantastically beautiful. It is made in Unreal Engine, which makes it top of the line and one of the more pleasant gacha games to take a look at. But let me be clear, the graphics do not only end at the environment or through a couple of the landscapes, it also includes a lot of the animations, the skills, you name it, they have it. Now, as you'll see in this video, there's a couple previews of characters that look absolutely fantastic, and although we don't have every single character announced or shown right now, the ones that we do see are really good looking. I promise you, this is not a joke, this is not even an exaggeration. A lot of the designs, the ultimates, even the themes of the characters seem wonderfully colorful and are honestly really stand out. Now, on the topic of visually stunning and things that leave me breathless, we have to talk about the combat system. Now, there has been an influx of more recent games that have the action combat archetype when it comes to attacking, defending, etc. But Neverness to Everness capitalizes on the newfound genre that has been taking the gacha scene by storm by making it even simpler and way more appealing, both in terms of the satisfaction when you hit something, in terms of simplicity when you're trying to swap between your characters, and honestly, just in terms of how satisfying it looks to be able to do some of the combat combos. Now, I did just mention the combat sound effects as being something that I do appreciate, and you may be wondering why I even included that and whether that's even worth looking into or if it's even worth mentioning. However, if you didn't remember, when Wuthering Waves first came out, one of the biggest issues with the combat of Wuthering Waves and the way that it felt was the fact that doing parries, counters, and even some of the hits felt like they were really lacking or unsatisfactory simply because of how wet noodly or how unimpactful the hits felt. This is absolutely not the case in Neverness to Everness, and you can see through all the fights, encounters, and bosses that you fight that every hit that you land in Neverness to Everness leaves a meaningful and impactful hit on the enemy. Now, there are some other things that I want to talk about that aren't about combat, but that I think actually separate a game like Neverness to Everness to other gacha games in the market right now. First and foremost, let's talk about the most obvious different aspect that most other gacha games don't have, and that's this whole inclusion of driving and the vehicles in this game. If you played any other gacha games recently, you're probably familiar with something like a glider, maybe some animal or echo or something that you can use to transform into a faster moving object. But the truth is that no game has actually given you access to a literal car or any form of transportation that directly drives on the ground. Now, I know most gacha games are set in fantastical settings, so we don't necessarily need to be walking in and out of transit, but it actually does add a lot of life and kind of immersion into the environment that you're in. Neverness to Everness has plenty of vehicles, has plenty of cars, and that's not even talking about the different transit options that you have access to. Plain and simple, this really feels like a city type game where you are driving through the streets, you can bang up against some of the railings, destroy some of the setting, and even, I don't know, sometimes swerve into pedestrians if you're a psychopath. But that's not the only thing that I want to point out specifically about the driving system in this game, because there's actually more to it. Now, if you are familiar with the Grand Theft Auto series or any other series that involves driving and stealing cars from pedestrians, you're probably familiar with the stealing of cars, but something that they decided to also include in Neverness to Everness is your ability to modify and enhance or customize your own cars. That includes the colors, the performance of some cars, and this is honestly really unexpected and probably unnecessary in most gacha games, but I think is actually very charming. Despite there being no real need for a lot of these features, even things like the convenience stores, the markets that you walk into, the different stores that are around the city, this paired alongside the car and driving system really makes the world feel super immersive. Now, I want to be clear that my recommendation to play this game isn't just because of my deeply rooted desire to get isekai'd or immersed into a video game or anything like that. This game does actually provide a very interesting look into what a different kind of gacha game can be. It's not the sort of gacha game that only focuses on combat, it doesn't only focus on PvE or storytelling. It's a very healthy mix of both, while also being a pretty decently open world kind of exploration game. Now, in terms of what we've seen thus far, there are, of course, things that are subject to change, and although there are a couple couple characters that you can experiment with and learn about. What honestly surprises me the most and is the most appealing to me right now is just that the game doesn't seem to take itself too seriously. Things like standing on top of cars as they drive down the freeway or down certain roads just for no apparent reason, or even running out to the outskirts of the city just to start swimming or messing around, are things that honestly make any exploration game feel a little bit more enjoyable. It doesn't feel like you're forced to do anything specifically. It doesn't feel like the game was directly designed with a linear path in mind. And the truth is that this is actually something that is very missing from a lot of games recently. If you've played any other gacha games recently, you know that a lot of them are rushes to the finish line and you want to get done with the storyline or get done with all your achievements and random side stories so you can enjoy the main aspect of the game for longer. But Neverness to Everness is a game that I find to be endearing and almost appealing just because of how much freedom you have in the game. If you want to just run around and take screenshots endlessly because you just want to, by all means, feel free to do so. And based on the different environmental aspects and different things that get spawned, this isn't a dead world. There are different moving parts. There are people that spawn and walk around, and that's not even talking about the cars that spawn, the different transit rides you can go on, the dynamic day and night system, to name a few. Now, there is something that I don't have exact details on, but I thought was really promising and interesting, and that's talking about the building and purchasing of houses system. Now, from what we know right now, there is no guarantee or there's no news officially that this is going to be in the game yet, but based on some of the designs and news and some of the videos that I've seen from other creators, there's actually been some mention about the housing or there being buildings that you can buy in this game specifically. Now, this wouldn't be that big of a deal if, you know, this was just a generic gacha game and you were playing some 2D chibi game where you of course have dorms, but the idea of a 3D dormitory system is actually very appealing for a number of reasons. Number one, if you haven't seen the success of a game like Snowbreak, which has recently gone down the deep end when it comes to their dormitory system, there's a lot of potential there in terms of what you can have or what you can add. Now, this doesn't have to just be a Coomer aspect, although I'm sure a lot of players will definitely appreciate allowing themselves to see their waifus in dormitories or things of this nature, but it does also mean that they have potential for mini games. They have the ability for you to customize your own rooms, the ability for you to use the dorms or houses as a creative outlet to share with other players is extremely intriguing and honestly very promising. And this is what I really want to hammer home as the main reason why I find this game to be so interesting. The game has such an insane amount of small secrets or unnecessary details that most other games would honestly pass over. But the truth is that specifically for Neverness to Everness, all of these small details actually build what I would consider to be one of the most cohesive, interesting looking open world experiences for a gacha game on the market right now. Personally, I appreciate small details like this, specifically because it allows you to attach yourself to the fandom and allows you to attach yourself to the world. And although some players will appreciate things like skip buttons or just want to get to the end game where they can start doing their dailies, I find that a lot of the small things that they add to a game like this will actually end up allowing people to do fan arts, cosplays, talk more about the lore of the game, and actually stay invested in a game that otherwise would just be another action combat gacha. Now, personally, I've seen a lot when it came to this game, formerly through trailers and also just through discourse on Twitter, but the truth is that this is a game that regardless of how it performs or what other people think about it, I'm inevitably going to be giving a try. And I do also want to mention to those of you watching this video that of course, these are just my thoughts personally, and these are my thoughts as someone that really enjoys finding new gacha games or sharing gacha games and sharing my opinions on them. Of course, if you have some other thoughts or feelings or comments that you want to share about Neverness to Everness, or if you have some other conclusions that you've drawn from the Tokyo Game Show or any other footage when it comes to Neverness to Everness, by all means, feel free to do so. However, for me personally, I found the game to be wonderfully charming, have an insane amount of customization for a game that honestly didn't really need to have that much, and otherwise I've been extremely happy with what I've seen, what's been showcased and demoed, even without the game being out right now. Now, of course, guys, to summarize things, here's what you can expect from Neverness to Everness. It's a very open world kind of game that features some more city-like aspect or landscape. There's a lot of emphasis seemingly on the driving aspect of the game, which is honestly really cool, especially because you can modify them. But from what we can tell right now, not only is this used to travel around and also personalize or make your own individual kind of vehicle, it also acts as a way for you to fight some bosses as well, which is really insane. There's also, of course, things that kind of immerse you into the game, as I mentioned, like public transport, the buses, the rail system. Now, although some of these things may not be that interesting for those of you that aren't interested in immersing yourself in a gacha game, I think inarguably the idea of owning property or being able to customize a house, a building, a room, and I don't know, maybe have your favorite husbandos or waifus in it actually just seems really unique and cool, especially in a 3D action combat kind of game. Now, of course, this isn't even talking about the amazing visuals, the scenery, the landscapes that honestly look absolutely top notch. But ultimately, guys, it also feels like the combat is up to par with some of the other games in the market right now, especially if you're someone that really appreciates playing these games on mobile. I won't go too far in depth with the combat, to be honest, because as we've seen with other games, there has been changes or adjustments that end up going live by the time that the game actually releases. But let's just be clear, having a game be a little bit more simplistic on the combat side is definitely not a bad thing. To be honest, some of the Zenless Zone Zero or even the Wuthering Waves content is pretty hard to clear on mobile. I don't know if you guys have tried doing that when you're out or on the go, but it's not that easy, honestly. Before I go though, guys, I just want to remind you guys that if you're interested in the game, feel free to pre-register for the game using my link in the description or in the pinned comment down below. And as always, thanks again for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review and my impressions of Neverness to Everness. I actually think it's very interesting. I'm probably going to be trying this game no matter what happens because it genuinely looks like a very interesting game. So as always, guys, thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.